Today we are going to start talking about connective tissues. Connective tissues is the largest group, our main group of tissues that are found in the human body. And it's kind of a catch-all group. So it's got a lot of different functions, much more than what we saw with the epithelial tissue. Some of their functions include binding structures together, which makes sense. It's called connective tissue. Another one is to provide support, protection for other parts of your body. It can also serve as frameworks, holding your body together, holding other tissues together, supporting your epithelial tissues. They can fill spaces, store fat, produce blood cells, protect you against any infections, as well as helping to repair tissue damage. So as you can see, their functions are widely varied, and a lot of the different kinds of tissues have just one of those functions or a couple of them. It just depends on the type of tissue that it is. Now, one of the terms that we'll be using when we talk about connective tissue is the matrix. And the matrix, I need the eraser here. Okay, refers to the extracellular material. Tissues are composed of multiple types of cells. Okay, and with connective tissue, there's a lot of times there's open space around the cells. They're not tightly packed together like what we saw with the epithelial tissue. And so a matrix is going to consist of fibers, okay, smaller than cells, and some kind of a ground substance. In some tissues it's solid, and could be liquid. It just depends. They also have varying degrees of vascularity, meaning some have more blood vessels than others. Some are very highly are full of blood vessels, and some have very few blood vessels. So when we look at some of these different pictures here, okay, we can see the areolar or the loose connective tissue. You can see the yellow fibers up there. There's kind of some right in there. There's a few cells spread throughout. We get into the adipose tissue. Not so much the fibers. They're not as noticeable, but they're there. Then you can see some of the cells. They're not necessarily jam-packed close to each other. If we look at the fibers themselves, you've got white fibers. They're more there to provide strength for your connective tissue, and the yellow fibers provide more of that elasticity, kind of allows it to stretch a little bit. The cells that form or that help to form connective tissue, there's two main kinds. There's your fixed cells, which are fibroblasts and mast cells, and then there's also cells that are capable of leaving the tissue or moving around. Those are called macrophages. The most common fixed cell is the fibroblast. Its function is to produce fibers. Macrophages actually originate as or start out as white blood cells, and they're specialized for phagocytosis, meaning they're actually going to basically eat or engulf pathogens or dead cell material, whatever it happens to be. They can leave the tissue, they can leave like your bloodstream, go out into the tissue around it, and basically consume those pathogens and cellular debris. Mast cells are a special kind of cell that's usually located near blood vessels, and they secrete two things. They secrete heparin and histamine. Heparin is important because it prevents your blood from clotting inside your blood vessels. And histamine is important because it helps to promote inflammation. It also causes allergies because of that. Inflammation is usually a result of some kind of injury or trauma to an area. And so histamine causes an influx of white blood cells, other fluids, and so a lot of times there's some swelling that's associated with that. The connective tissue fibers are produced by your fibroblasts. There's three different types. There's collagenous fibers, elastic fibers, and reticular fibers. Collagenous fibers are very thick. They're composed of the protein collagen, okay, and an important component of your skin. The collagenous fibers are there to provide a lot of strength, so that picture we saw with the white and the yellow fibers, the white fibers are your collagenous fibers. They help to hold body parts together, so they're a key component of your ligaments, which hold bone to bone, and your tendons, which connect muscle to bone. Dense connective tissue is composed of a lot of these collagenous fibers, and that's what actually makes up your tendons and your ligaments. Loose connective tissue is only going to have a little bit of these collagenous fibers. There's going to be a lot more open air, why it's called loose connective tissue, and so it's not going to be as durable. You're going to find that more in places that need to connect different kinds of tissue to each other. Elastic fibers are composed of microfibrils, so really small fibers that are embedded in a protein called elastin. They're going to be found more in body parts that have to stretch. Okay, like for instance your vocal cords. They're always constantly moving and stretching when you're talking as air is passing over them. And then there's reticular. Reticular, there we go, are very thin collagenous fibers. So they're going to be white in color too. Move it over, sorry. They're more highly branched than your collagenous fibers were, and so you're going to find them in a lot of your internal organs, like for instance your spleen. They help hold things together there. Alright, our first connective tissue is loose connective tissue. And as I said, you're mostly going to find it in places where different organs are coming together. It's going to help connect them. When we get to the cat dissection, you'll be able to cut through a lot of loose connective tissue. So it's located beneath most layers of your epithelium, so it's going to be between your epidermis and your dermis. It's located between your muscles, and that's where we'll see it on the cat, is the loose connective tissue between the muscles when we need to go through and separate them. Most cells of the loose connective tissue are called fibroblasts, and loose connective tissue's main function is to bind things together, whether it's binding skin to your other organs, binding muscles together, and it's typically also is responsible for nourishing epithelial cells, because remember, epithelial cells or epithelial tissue don't have their own blood supply. Adipose tissue is composed of their own kind of cell called adipocytes. And these are cells that store fat. Okay? The bigger the cell, the more fat that there is in it. Adipose tissue is found all throughout the body. It's beneath your skin. It helps to serve as an insulator, keeps you a little bit warmer, also cushions, like around your kidneys, behind your eyeballs. It's located on the surface of the heart. When we get to our sheep heart dissection, one of the things you'll have to do before we can cut open the heart is get the extra adipose tissue off the outside of it. Adipose tissue, as I said, it serves to insulate, protect, cushion, and store excess fat. Reticular connective tissue is composed of the reticular fibers, so you're going to see that in some of your internal organs like your liver, your spleen, and your lymphatic organs. This isn't a very good picture. We do have a microscope slide of this. Hopefully that will be a little bit better image than this is. Dense connective tissue consists of a lot of closely packed, thick collagenous fibers. That's why it's called dense connective tissue. There's not a lot of open space in there. A very fine network of elastic fibers, so it can stretch a little bit. And very few cells, mostly it's composed of those fibers, and the cells that it does contain are fibroblasts, which are responsible for making or forming those fibers. Now, there's two different subclasses of dense connective tissue. There's regular dense connective tissue and there's irregular dense connective tissue. Regular dense connective tissue is going to bind the body parts together as parts of your tendons and your ligaments. and irregular dense connective tissue is located in the dermis. Okay, so the dermis is that middle layer of your skin located right beneath the, if I need my eraser, right beneath the stratified squamous epithelium that forms your epidermis. Let's see, eraser. Yep, there we go. Alright, so this is just a view of your dense connective tissue. This would be your regular dense connective tissue. So this is what you're going to see in, similar to this will be what the tendons and ligaments slide looks like. Next is elastic connective tissue. And this is the last connective tissue that we're going to talk about today. Components include yellow elastic fibers, collagenous fibers, and fibroblasts. And its locations, you're going to find it between bones of your spinal column. It allows you to basically help to move your spine. A little bit of flexibility there. It's found within the walls of certain hollow internal organs, so like your stomach, for instance. It's found in larger arteries, like your aorta, your femoral artery. It's also found in parts of your heart and your larger airways, like your trachea and your bronchi.